One of the things we did formerly in the class has been the so-called seglet nouns, and I want to just develop a little more about the seglet nouns involving laryngeal letters. So, for example, the three seglet nouns I did give you are words like yeled. The problem is to have a pen that's going to write properly. Just bear with me. Okay, this is a little better. One type of seglet nouns are nouns that have two segos in the last two syllables of the word. I happen to write a word on the board which is which is bisyllabic, two syllables, so it's more convenient. That's one type of seglet noun. Another type of seglet noun is the Boker type. We have the media cholam, and then you have the sego with the last syllable. And then you have a third type of seglet noun, such as the word sefer, represented by a tsere in the second to last syllable. And you'll notice that in all three words, you'll have a segol as part of the last syllable. It's probably that segol, part of the last syllable, which has given rise to the title, the segolate nouns. What makes the segolate nouns or segolate nouns so unusual is that the plural for all of them, there are exceptions, will have the formula of a shva, and then you continue with a shva, kamas, kirik, yud, mem. Now, chirik, yud, mem. Notice I'm not saying yud, chirik, mem. Chirik, yud, that's the same thing as saying the long E sound as you go back to your vowel chart, ending with the letter mem. So the word yeled, for example, would not be yeledim. As you add the chirik yud mem to a noun that's masculine, that's normally how you form the plural. In the case of a seglet noun, we change the vocalization and it becomes yiladim. Notice how I'm spelling it, a shva, a kamatz, and the chirik yud mem in the last syllable. In the case of boker, the Hebrew word for morning, you would think it would be bokerim, just add the chirik yud mem to the resh. The response is no, it's a seglet noun, and so it will be bikarim, bikarim, bikarim. Notice what I'm doing, bikarim. And that word bikarim, as I'm going over that word in my mind, boker will be bikarim, sounds like another word that has the same shoresh, the same root as the word for morning. I'm thinking of the word bakar. Bakar is the Hebrew word for cattle. Bakar, bakar. And the question would now therefore be, what is the plural of the word bakar? Is it bakarim? If this is a medial kamatz, one place removed from the accent, and I add the characteristic masculine plural chirik yud mem at the end, then this kamatz is two places removed from the accent. Notice what I'm doing. I'm doing 1, 2, 3 is the way it appears right now, but the kamatz is 1, 2 places removed from the accent and reduces to a shvana, and its form will be bikarim. Does bikarim look like the word bikarim here? And I guess the response is yes. So the question is, how can you tell the difference between mornings and cattle in the plural? With that dilemma in front of me, the professor is now going to consult the book. I'm doing this to show you what the exercise in Hebrew is about. When you see something that is similar, but it's not the same word, how to explain it? The way I can explain it is, don't have the word bikarim, but have the word as bakarim, and therefore the kamatz on the bet would be a long kamatz that does not reduce to a shvana when you shift your syllables or shift the accents. Let me double check that word bakar. Let me see if I have that word bakar in the dictionary. It should. And let me see if there's a plural given for both the word boker and for the word bakar, and then we'll go from that. The word boker, I see that word. I see the plural is bikarim. I'm now looking for the word bakar. I see the word bakar spelled a different way. I'll explain that in a second. But the word bakar for cattle, I don't see it. I see the word a herdsman spelled differently, and I'll explain that in a second. Here it is. The word for cattle is bakar. It translates it as cattle, herds, Herds, and oxen. It does not give the plural. So Professor Garber, maybe what you should be saying is that the word bakar is both singular and plural. Bakar, cattle, is both singular and plural. There's no bakarim, there's no bikarim, and there won't be a problem that you're creating right now. And now that I think about it, I've learned something. One of the questions raised by Baruch is, what about English grammar? In English, the word cattle, is it singular or is it plural? I might have one ox in mind when I say cattle. I might have five oxen in mind when I say cattle, but I use the same word cattle. I don't say cattles. I learned something. The word bakar is singular and plural. The text in the dictionary does not say that at all. It just simply says bakar, gives a translation, doesn't bother with the plural, doesn't even make an attempt to say it's one singular and one plural. And now, what about other words? Let me just pick up on this right now. When you begin to investigate one word, you begin to learn about other words. I did see a word in the dictionary called bakar. Notice the spelling of the word bakar. Bakar. Bakar spelled with a patach. And watch what I'm about to do. The Bega Kefat letter, those 6 letters that begin a word, always have a plosive dot in it. Israeli Hebrew still continues with the plosive dot pronunciation with the letter bet. Without the dagesh, the dot in that bet letter would be pronounced as a vet letter, as a V sound. So that's not a problem. The vowel underneath that bet letter is a patach. A patach is a short vowel. Short vowels should be found in closed syllables. So I begin my syllabication CV, but what's going to close that patach? There's no shvanach underneath that kuf letter, but there is the other phenomenon. If a letter has a dot in it and that letter follows a short vowel, including Bega Kefet letters, then that dot is not called the Dagesh Kal, it's called the Dagesh Chazak, the so-called strong dot, not the so-called light dot. And that's what you see here. What that dot does, it doubles the letter which it's found in. So we have CVC. That kuf letter is repeated to begin the next syllable, which is CVC containing a medial kamatz, and a medial kamatz is either accented or not accented. If there was no accent on the last syllable, and you have a close situation with the kamatz, then the kamatz is a short sound. It's an or, but the emphasis is on that last syllable. Unless you're told otherwise, expect in Sephardic pronunciation a accent on the last syllable. So what's the difference between bakar and bakar spelled with a kamatz? This is the word cattle. And a person who works with cattle, a herdsman, whatever you call these words in English, is called a bakar. In other words, what you have here is another sign of different nouns. If a noun has this combination, a patach, dagesh chazak, a kamatz, bisyllabic, 2 syllables. Notice what I have there. I have a CVC, the first syllable. I have CVC with the second, but this is the combination. Any noun that has these vowels, patach, dagesh chazak, kamatz, final syllable, final consonant. These are signs of profession or actions that are repeated and repeated and repeated, which is what a professional person does. The type of work he does or she does is repetitive. Could you give us several examples that represent the type of word like bakar? A bakar is not somebody who just deals with cattle one day and that's it, but makes a life profession out of it. That's his profession. That's his occupation. That's his devotion. Other words that have this combination. The word ganav. Ganav. A ganav is a thief. A ganav is not someone who robs and then doesn't rob anymore. A ganav is a professional stealer, robber, whatever you want to say in English. It has that combination, a ganav. Another word that comes to mind is if you are a ganav, you'll be brought one day to a dayan. Again, notice what I'm doing. They all have the same vocalization. Apatak, lagesh chazak, hamatz, final letter. Apatak, lagesh chazak, hamatz, final letter. They all look like the word bakar. That's what we're saying. A dayan is a judge. And in Hebrew, we have two types of judges. We have a secular judge who's called a shofet, and we have a judge who is a religious judge dealing with religious issues called a dayan. And don't forget your Hebrew grammar. In that word dayan, the dalet letter, like the gimel letters, the bega kefal letter, the gesh kal. The yud letter in the middle of this word is a strong dot there to close the patach before, as the nun here has a strong dot to close the patach before, as the kuf here has a strong dot to close the patach before. And in the state of Israel, there are two judicial systems. Let me take a moment on that one. There's a secular court, which is the higher court, and there's a religious court. But the religious court will determine whether the synagogue you call a synagogue is really a synagogue, whether the marriages and divorces you basically are participant in are legally understood to be true marriages and true divorces, whatever. And that's determined by the religious court system of Israel, not by the secular court. And if there's a conflict between the two, then theoretically, Israel is a democratic secular state as I speak right now. So the democratic secular state has the higher vote. And there's one case that comes to mind. His name, Brother Daniel. I say Brother Daniel to you, I don't mean a fellow member of the tribe necessarily. A brother Daniel can also be a physical blood relative. A young Jewish boy from Poland during his world's years of the Holocaust to show up. Somehow escaped the tragedy by being taken in by a Catholic family or whatever and converted to Christianity. His commitment to Judaism never departed. He became a Catholic monk. He took on the name of Brother Daniel. And Brother Daniel belonged to the Carmelite monks. The Carmelite monks have to deal with the Mount Carmel, which is found in Haifa. And that was his hope. As a Carmelite monk, he requested to have his final or his years of service to be on Mount Carmel. He received that permission. Are you listening to me, family? And then once he got to Israel, he did what every Jew who loves the land is expected to do. He requested citizenship in the land of Israel. So what's the big deal now? He went to the Beit Din. He went to a court of Jewish law. And here is where the problem comes in. By Jewish law, he had to be recognized as a Jew, even though he wore his Carmelite Catholic uniform. But the Beit Din, if I understood what took place, said, in all due respect, Brother Daniel, what you're requesting from us, we don't have the authority. You got to go to the Beit Mishpat, to the secular Supreme Court or secular courts. And once you're into secular court, then they don't have to follow the religious laws. And so told him that you'll become a citizen like any Gentile, as they did not recognize his Jewish commitment to Catholicism to continue his Jewishness that way.
Let me ask you a question. Since we don't have the Beit Hamidrash and there's the worldwide diaspora, why would it be that those rabbis in Israel have precedence and supersede the rulings of
Because
all the
that's
other rabbis all over the world that have their own religious structure don't adhere to that necessarily, and I'm sure that's the case.
no, there's no question about that. You have different types of Hasidic groups, Haredi groups, that will basically have a different understanding of religious law than the Beit Din of Israel. But the state of Israel, by official state law, does have a Supreme Court that's religious, whatever, with Chief Rabbi for the Ashkenazim and Chief Rabbi for Sephardim.
And they work in conjunction, or
They
for
work,
their own
they, well,
communities?
if they're able to work in conjunction, they will. There's also a dispute between the two. Case example is Ovadia Yosef. The former chief rabbi of the Sephardic community was extremely popular. And it was he that had to pass judgment on the Ethiopian Jews.
And he's the one that said that they're kosher?
And he's the one that said they had to go through some kind of conversion. And they responded, no, we're not.
And then what was the end result?
And the result was Ovadia Yosef was declined his request. He felt there had to be a token conversion. They said there's no token conversion. We never converted to anything else. Born Jewish, been that way for centuries.
The Ethiopian.
I'm not talking about the other African Jews now. These are the Ethiopian Beta Israel group.
Where are they located?
They're located either in Ethiopia, or many of them are now in Israel, and many of them serve the Israeli army, and many of them are there, and many of them are here. By that I mean they're all over the place. And to make it even more specific, when Netanyahu came to America, whatever, after October 7th, among the group that joined him was an Israeli soldier who sat in that audience, of which Netanyahu pointed him out. This is before Congress, the House of Representatives, the Senate sitting together, happened to be a black man, an Ethiopian Jew, one of the heroes of October 7th. So you ask, what did this man do? Are you ready to hear the response? He was miles away from the attack of October 7th. He had to warn people. He got on his feet and began to run. And he ran, and he ran, did not stop. 27 miles.
It's like the guy that won all the marathons in the world.
I don't know what he did.
No, the guy that won world champion for the marathons, he's from Ethiopia. Because all he would do is just run barefoot through the mountains.
I guess
they got endurance.
Ethiopians run. I guess they got legs. They got this. Israel has a number of black Africans who serve on their national team. Some of them not even Jewish. They're Israelis. Let's put it. Well, wait a minute. How can you be an Israeli and not be a Jew? That's where the secular courts come in. And if you're a Jew, that doesn't necessarily make you an Israeli.
I met an Armenian gentleman. He does security for synagogues. Actually, the one of the where they had the right on Pico is security for that. But I mean, I don't think that. But the point was, he was in the Armenian Christian in the Israeli security forces. And that's not easy to get a clearance or get into the. Right. I asked the Israeli, said, "Wow, that guy must be pretty accomplished."
Yeah, no, the IDF has everybody's community within the IDF. They're not obligated to serve. They voluntarily serve. The Druze one of the Druze, in fact, is going to be a high commander right now of the Israeli army. It's going to be elected into office right now. Anyway, let me get back to my words here. So Dayan, basically, as far as Brother Daniel goes, one last statement about him. He does become an Israeli citizen, not the way he chose to be. That is to say, by the Beit Din recognition that he's a Jew type of thing, but by a secular person, a non-Jew, let me use that term, who challenges to become an Israeli citizen. And then one last story about Brother Daniel. He's now deceased. He did have Israeli relatives who remained Jewish, etc. He was invited to the bar mitzvah of one of his relatives. He was invited to come up to the Sefer Torah. And in a secular type of kibbutz where they had a Sefer Torah, Brother Daniel basically said, "I'm afraid I cannot do that."
Well, that's his opinion.
This shows how he himself took the condemnation, and he's not a Jew anymore, a little seriously now.
No, he's born a Jew. He's still a Jew. That's what it is. Not everybody's right, and that's his opinion. Just because the rabbis, the top rabbis, their opinion isn't necessarily right, because like in the Gemara, there's 4 or 5 different opinions to deal with an issue, and there's some kind of reconciliation in that contradiction.
All right, well, Zev Garber, if you're interested, has an article on Edith Stein. She's now
I've heard that.
Yeah. Well, let me just answer that. I don't take that position. Edith Stein wants to be seen as a Jew by the Catholic Church. I wrote an article which they quote in the official statement of her sainthood. They quote Zev Garber, where I take the position that once a Jew, always a Jew, except if one practices another avodah, another type of religious service. In my opinion, she disqualified by that. But okay, you can have different opinions, but that's what makes this whole thing a mixture, where you have a Jewish peoplehood, but it's not defined necessarily by one strict definition of religion. And to add to all this, let me just show you how, let me just add one comment, it's necessary. One of the leading opposition groups to Zionism, the Satmar Hasidim, and in Israel called the Turakarta group, the chief rabbi for many years, his second wife, the first wife died in the Shoah, was a Roman Catholic nun, a Roman Catholic nun, a Roman Catholic nun who shaved her hair, because that's what they did with Roman Catholic nuns in France. Converted to Judaism way back then, became extremely Orthodox, and winds up to be the Rebbitzin, or the chief rabbi of the Satmar Hasidim.
It's like, you know,
It doesn't stop.
that reminds me of the girl that was from El Salvador that married Rabbi Azulai and became another wife.
Yeah, well, that's it. So it happens, and people like us can only observe, appreciate, and just go on with life. Okay, let me get back to my Hebrew. So the word here, the Ganav, the Dayan, the Bakar, and then there's one more word which I have to say because the intelligent person who brought this all together is part of this next word. The word Chazan. A Chazan is a cantor, so we're told. A Chazan is a leader in the music composition of synagogue singing, whatever you want to call it. Notice the vocalization of the word chazan, the patak, the gesh chazak, the chamatz. It is part of those words that show by the vocalization it's not just a fleeting moment, it is a permanent experience, if you will call
For
it.
reference for everyone, what page are we on in the book now?
I haven't looked at any book yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's just that I thought the word chazan, in your case, Baruch, is so necessary. First week I met Chazan, he comes in with a shofar to my classroom, and he has that singing voice of the Mizrahim that can scare everybody. Anyway, the Chazan, the Bakar, the Dayan, and the Ganav. And then there's another word. That word Bakar is the word Boker. If you look at all these words, if you write them without vowels, and this is another point that must be stressed, when Hebrew is written without vowels, how can you tell what a word is implied here? Is it the word bakar? Is it the word boker? Is it the word bikar? Let's give you still another word, bikar, which is a verb to visit. The verb to visit, V-I-S-I-T, conjugated in the third person masculine past tense. Now you ask yourself, if words have the same three consonants as their root, what is the relationship? What is the relationship between the word to meet, the word cattle, the word morning? And I can make up a narrative. A bakar, a cattleman, visits Bikar, his cattle, his bakar, not in the evening, but in the morning. He starts his day at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. See how the words are all connected? But you have to have an imagination to do something of that nature. Okay, let's go on now. What I would like to go on now that we have some of these words back on the board, is to show you the segment nouns involving laryngeal letters. So example number 4 is the word na'ar. Notice what I'm writing. The word na'ar. Na'ar is a young person. Na'ar is traditionally understood to be that age of a person before he develops into a bachur. Or let me explain it this way. When a child comes into this world, he goes through he or she, I'm going to use the he gender, goes through a number of stages. When you first enter, you are a tinok. You are a suckling, a tinok. A tinok, well, let's write those words down to help us out. The tinok. A tinok. The word tinok is related to the word to suck, a suckler. And that's probably the baby coming into the world and the suckling of the mother's milk. How many months is that? It could be 2 months, it could be no months, it could be 3 months. Who knows how long? But that's the understanding, the infant. And then eventually the infant is able to use a bottle of milk, or the infant is able to walk a little bit. And that develops into a yeled, A yeled translates as a boy in English. Use the word yalda if you want to go with a girl. I'm going to use the masculine words now. And then the yeled himself, when he becomes more rational and doesn't need parental supervision, I guess is when a na'ar sets in. And the na'ar reaches the age of 13, Yud Gimel, and becomes bar mitzvah. And at the age of bar mitzvah, these words are Aramaic. Bar is an Aramaic word which means son of, and the word mitzvah, son of the commandment, or basically meaning living the life of the Torah. In Jewish tradition, the adult sets in at bar mitzvah. And in Jewish rabbinic tradition, as a bar mitzvah is not mentioned in the Torah or anywhere else in the Hebrew scripture, is at the age of 13 years old. 13 years old and a day based on the Hebrew calendar of the birth of that infant. And once you are bar mitzvah, you are now an adult. And if you're an adult, you also have the ability to act like an adult. You can become totally independent. You can also get married. Marriage at 13, 14 years old. For a male, it's normally waiting. You wait a few more years. For a woman of equivalent age, a year younger, in fact, she's opened up for marriage already. And that has been done and still is done among Jews to this very day.
Yeah, but those are different times.
Yeah, well, I said still is done. Still is done. We no longer with different times among Jews, some Jews to this day. But these Jews come from Arabic-speaking backgrounds. The Yemenites are a good example of this. And I wouldn't be surprised if you find it elsewhere. There's, in fact, different cults of Jews who are basically, they're excommunicated. They're extremely orthodox in their practices, and they marry cousins or second cousins whose ages are 13 or 14 years old today. They're in Canada. Well,
that's not the rule. That's the exception.
Okay, but you can tell them that, and they can tell you back in return, we're following traditions that are ancient. You don't have to tell us what we have to be doing now. I understand what you're saying. But the whole idea is to get the idea of adulthood. Because once you are a na'ar, you are basically under supervision. Once you get to the bar mitzvah age, you now become a bahur. And this is a word that all men who don't get married in Judaism would understand what that word means. A bahur is from the Hebrew word to choose, but it's found in a passive sense, a bahur, one who is chosen. Suggesting now that you're an adult, you are now destined to fulfill that adulthood by being married and starting the next generation. Now, how does that work? You go to a synagogue. You go up to the Torah. You call up to the Torah. Ya'amo, let him stand, and then you're introduced by a title. Ya'amo habahur. What? The man looks 70 years old. Habahur. It's embarrassing. I said to someone who opened our office just this morning, I've been here since 1970, before you were born. He laughed. Oh, sir, I was born in 1964. But he had a good laugh on that. He's so old now. My God. But that's the word. The word Bakhur never changes because it's a way of trying not to embarrass you, but in a way it can embarrass by calling attention to the public. Here is an unmarried person. Invite them home. You have daughters. They have to be married off. And so life continues. And then that's it. If you are married, then you're called a Baal, a master, a provider, I guess. A husband in English.
That's the first part of Balcore, the master reader.
That's right. Any word that has the word Baal means one who masters something. The Baal Bayit, for example, is a term we use for who's the owner of the house. The Baal Bayit if you're married, where's your Baal Bayit? Where's the husband? Assuming that the husband is responsible for all affairs. Not in my house. The wife takes over these issues.
Most houses, it's like that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the way it comes down to. And then there is the last stage where you become Niftar. Niftar is the age where you're no longer Niftar. You're gone. You're expired. Okay, so of all these stages of names, the one that stands out is the Na'ar to the Bachur, and the ritual that's involved here is the Bar Mitzvah. And just the title itself, Bar, implies something is a little strange. Why an Aramaic word and not the Hebrew? It's obvious. It comes from a generation of sages, of rabbis, where the natural language of spoken was the language of Aramaic, which is the Talmud part, the Gemara part. And let me make that comment right now because I'm afraid not all of us have a sense of this. The so-called rabbinic literature comes in different stages, but the one I'm talking about right now is known in English as the Talmud, and the Talmud has two sections to it. One is called the Mishnah. Some people pronounce it as Mishnah, Mishnah, Mishnah with the kamats. Though the pronunciation Mishnah is also found among the Ashkenazim. The word has two syllables. Do you all see that? The consonant mem, the chirik, closed by the shvan nach and the next letter, CVC, and the second syllable is CVC, the nun, the kamatz, and the hey. And the hey is in brackets, and it's the last letter. It's truly not a consonant, it's a vowel marker. The word Mishnah, again, the root is shin nun hey. That shin nun hey looks like the word shana. Now what's involved? Is it to study the Mishnah, which is a smaller tract than the one that makes up the other part of the Talmud called the Gemara, in a year's time? I doubt it. What both these roots have in common is the word to change, lishanot, to change something. To change? When a year comes and a year goes, a new year is a new beginning. A change is not going to happen. It's not the same year anymore. And when you do the Mishnah, what you're doing is you're taking verses of the Torah Shebektav, and you are interpreting it and interpreting it. And when you finish interpreting it, you change it. Let that be part of a Hebrew lesson. Hebrew reflects that in the language of Torah Shebektav and Torah Shebal Peh. The word Torah itself means teaching. And then that which is written down, She, Be, Tav. All right, it's going to be a little confusing right now. Shebektav. The Torah that is in writing. Shebektav.
That's the unwritten Torah, you're saying?
This is the Torah as it's handed down, the written Torah.
Oh, okay. And how would you say the oral Torah?
Torah Sheba'al Peh. She, that. Be'al. Be'al Peh. Torah that's on the mouth.
Oh, wow.
Al Peh means on. Peh is mouth, which means you talk Torah. You interpret Torah. Biktav is already writing, the written Torah. The Mishnah's purpose is taking words, sentences, whatever they may be, of the Torah Shebektav and interpreting it in such a way it comes out differently when the Mishnah finishes with it. A good example is ayin tachet ayin, eye for eye. When something is done and damaged, eye for eye. When the Mishnah finishes with that verse, it's mamon tachet ayin. It's money for the eye, the value of an eye, rather than literally eye for eye. Well, why can't you do eye for eye? Because Zev Garber has blue eyes. Baruch does not have blue eyes, no matter how much he claims he does.
Contacts.
Okay. So if God forbid I damage his eye, and he's going to say, well, the Torah says eye for eye, you have to have the same size eye. I have to have the same size eye as my victim, same color, same this. It's impossible. So you can understand the need for interpretation. And the Mishnah is basically written in Hebrew. Let's just make this clear right now. It's written in Hebrew. And then the commentary on the Mishnah, of which we get the two names, the Babylonian, the Bavli, and the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, comes from two different communities. One still residing in the land of Israel, and hence the Jerusalem Talmud, and one residing in diaspora, which is a more influential one called the Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud. And both Talmuds basically give us the Gemara. Now watch what I write. See that word Gemara? I write it as Hebrew letters. You break up the word as if it were Hebrew. C-I-N-C-V, right? Notice the Gimel has the Dagesh Ka in it, Shwan Nachlit the Gimel, blah, blah, blah. The Mem has a Kamatz under it. The last syllable is CVC. And again, if a word ends with the letter Hey or the letter Aleph, according to grammarians, they are vowel markers.
So the syllabification applies to both the Hebrew and the Aramaic.
Yeah, well, I'm doing Hebrew right now. I'm not teaching Arabic.
It was right there, the Gemara, since the Kamat Aleph is an Aramaic indication.
Yeah.
So that's an Aramaic word. The rules of syllabification of Hebrew are being applied to that.
That's what I'm doing.
That's actually the
I have an Aramaic word on the board. You're right. The word ends with Kamat Aleph, unless told otherwise. There are many exceptions. It's probably an Aramaic word into Hebrew. But I'm dividing the word following Hebrew rules of grammar. And I guess the point I'm going to say right now is that the root of this word Gemara is the Hebrew root. So let's go back into Hebrew now. Gimel Memresh, which means to complete, to finish. The oral Torah starts in the Mishnah. It has other tractates, other editions like the Tosefta that has oral Torah in it too. But for our purposes, the Mishnah in Hebrew, following the Torah Shed B'Ksav that's in Hebrew, and then having its ending in Aramaic, suggesting the history of the Jews. At one time, the Jewish people were conversant in Hebrew, as long as they remained as a unity and stayed on the land. Now dispersed, they're now cultivated and cultured into different language, into different attitudes. The Gemara is Aramaic. It reflects the language primarily of Jews from the second Christian century and following, after Bar Kokhba rebellion. The Yerushalmi was basically codified in Israel, but it's hardly recognized. I don't mean recognized. It's hardly studied, Yerushalmi.
The Talmud, the Jewish Talmud was written on the run, on the way out hastily, whereas the Babylonian Talmud had more time, and it was more focused on the tradition of the Jews.
Well, wait. What was written on the run?
It's my understanding that the Jerusalem Gemara was written.
You're talking about Yerushalmi Gemara?
Correct. Was not as well thought out as
okay. I'm not going to dispute that. It's just that basically Yerushalmi is associated with Jerusalem and its sages who did not, so to speak, spend their years in Babylonia somewhere. But the basic diaspora of the Jews was Babylonia. And as a result of that, the settlement there and the development of what's called the Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud. The word is Bavli. And I would not be surprised that Bavli may well be Arabic, the Babylonian. But then again, when you compare the Bavli Gemara and the Yerushalmi, there's also different interpretations.
But one question, looking at the Bavli, how do you spell the Tower of Babel?
Bavel. In Hebrew, Bavel. I'm not questioning the spelling of it, but that word Bavli, Babylonian, Gemara, whatever, gives me a feeling of something Aramaic about it. And then Baruch, there's another problem. One of the basic laws of the Gemara, when you compare the Yerushalmi, which I'm putting restriction on, and Yerushalmi deals with Eretz Yisrael, and the Bavli deals with the Galut, deals with Jews dispersed now in the great diaspora of Babylonia, type of thing.
Have you read them both?
Well, 1 second. The Bavli is the one that's universally studied today in every yeshiva or house of learning, whatever you want to call it. Nobody studies intensively the Yerushalmi. Scholars may study Yerushalmi, but the average yeshiva bocher, a bachur, notice how the word is said, bocher, bocher. You have that tape where the rabbi says bocher. The word is bachur. Bachur is an unmarried male. And the unmarried male is because he's studying Torah day and night. And if he is married, then the wife is the one that's expected to take care of everything so that her husband can study Torah Yom V'Layla. And the classic stories of one rabbi who refused to get married because it would interrupt his Torah studies.
But interrupting his Torah studies, but he feels to complete the first mitzvah, which means be fruitful and multiply. So where are we with that?
That's why. Well, wait a minute. You're not off guard with that. That is why that story is cited to show a commitment to study Torah is important, but there is a limit. And when a child is born, who's going to take care of the child? The community all the time? Oh, there are all kinds of problems. Then when you have a modern Orthodoxy like Yeshiva University, what's this university dealing with the Yeshiva world? There's opposition there.
Wow, the Yeshiva University, they're modern Orthodox? I thought that they were like reformed or something.
No. They're not reformed. They're Orthodox.
What about the one on Mulholland Drive? What is that? They got the.
If it's Yeshiva University, I don't know.
Yeah, I forget.
YU in Manhattan is an Orthodox yeshiva. I'm a product of it, at least for 2 years in a high school. Anyway, let me just get back to something right now. Well, even though all I've said seems to make a lot of sense, there is always an exception, an exception, an exception. The most famous, in my opinion, influential, in my opinion, Talmudic law. By that I mean a dictum from the not from the Torah and not from the Tanakh, but from the rabbis themselves. It's written not in the Mishnah, it's written in the Talmud. I will write down that phrase right now. There's a problem with the whole system. The words are dina, nimachuta. I'm writing Aramaic.
Dina is a female or judgment?
No, dina is Aramaic. That's Kamatz Aleph, it's a masculine word.
Judgment? Din.
It's the Hebrew word din. Let me write the words down. Dina de machuta. Notice I am vocalizing the words following Hebrew grammar. Dinahu. The phrase is Aramaic. The law of the machuta, the law of the kingdom. In your English of today, the law of the land. Law, dinahu, is the law. Which means, Baruch, if the law of America says you cannot work on Memorial Day, American Memorial Day, cannot work on Independence Day, and you say it's not something I have to observe, I'm not, so to speak, it's not my religion type of thing. Irrelevant. It's the law of the land. And you can be sued. and you cannot fight it. It's the law of the land. The law of the land says you cannot sell liquor. It's a classic example of my own background. On Sunday, until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then my dad, who had his store closed on Shabbat, he was a pharmacist, but he also had an area where he had beer, sodas, also sold
you had a
Israel.
speakeasy during Prohibition?
Excuse me?
You had a speakeasy during Prohibition?
Not speakeasies. This is already when I was born, which about from the 1940s.
Oh, okay.
The state of New York, city of New York, I'm sure it was the state of New York, you could not sell liquor on Sundays
Wow.
until 1 o'clock.
Oh, those were the Christian laws.
It's not the Christian law. It's happened to be the law of the state of New York.
But the basis of that.
Well, the basis could well be Sunday as a day of observance. But 1 o'clock was the time you could start drinking liquor publicly or buy liquor, whatever.
We're talking after
1 second. No, wait a minute. My father's store did not sell liquor, even though my dad was not a Christian. The store was open Sunday morning. Most stores were closed on Sunday. My dad has his store closed on Shabbat. So Sunday was a day of work for him. But at 1 o'clock, people would come in, and my father was able to sell liquor. If they came before, he would not sell. He followed the law of the land. If he did not, he could have easily been sued or fined, or his license for selling liquor could have been taken away. I come to California, the first thing I noticed was the shock of going to a supermarket in Westwood and seeing the supermarket open where there's liquor being sold on Sunday morning.
The Ralph's? Was it the Ralph's on Westwood Boulevard? Or?
I don't
Another
recall.
one, yeah.
No, it's not Worship Boulevard. It was in Westwood. It may well have been right there on Worship Boulevard. That's where I did my shopping. But I was now thrown into another municipality which had no law regarding restriction on Sunday. Now you would think something like this is found in the Bavli. It's not. The Din of Machuta is a dictum from the Yerushalmi. And now you say to yourself, what the hell is the rabbis from Jerusalem dealing with the law of the land as a law? Are they talking about Greco-Roman law now? Are they talking about Jews no longer having the law? It could well be that. Or it could be what you said, Baruch. These Yerushalmi was on the run. All I know is I would think Adin Machuta is if Jews live among other cultures, not that type of statement if they lived and had their own sovereignty. And then take a look at the state of Israel today. If this thing is serious, which it is, then the state of Israel, its highest law is the secular one. What if they permit traffic in Jerusalem on Shabbat? You don't like that.
Riots.
Well, that's it. Was the law of the land. People would object to it, etc. But the law of the land. Needless to say, the law of the land will also have.
But in Israel, people drive, don't they? Like here, if they want to drive, they drive. If not, unless you're like in an Orthodox neighborhood, they'll start throwing rocks at you or be rude.
Well, people drive all over the place. You talking about on Shabbat?
Yeah. It's a secular country.
I know that. Even Orthodox Jews might drive. I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to say, Joe.
But I'm saying that in Israel, there's no Shabbat driving, universal Shabbat.
There's no public transportation, right?
Oh, there's no public transportation, but you can drive a car. Can people drive a car?
Privately, you drive, yes.
But there's absolutely no transportation.
In Jerusalem, there isn't. Tel Aviv, if I'm not mistaken, does have. And the public transportation, just to make this thing kosher for everybody, the drivers are not Jews, they're Arabs. They're Muslims, they're Druses, they're this, they're Christians. So that's how Israel can somehow satisfy that group and this group and that group. Now, what if I'm a Christian living in Israel, a Muslim? I'm being discriminated against. No, it's the law of the land. It's like living in the Christian land. And now you got this business with Shabbat. Shabbat now is becoming a strange thing because Christians, at least evangelicals, are now discovering Shabbat. And now what are they going to do with Sunday? There's a whole issue within a group itself that takes on different positions. And I guess that's what the Gemara is supposed to, that's what the Mishnah is supposed to be. You have something inherited, it's no longer viable or valid, let's assume, in the generation you're now living in. It's now being contested, the eye for eye, the tooth for tooth type of thing. And the Gemara is supposed to put an end to it with that word Gamar, Gomer, finish. But then when the Gemara comes to an end around the 5th or 6th century, it gets more commentaries later on and on and on. And then you have divisions within Jewish communities, including the so-called Orthodox. And it's no longer strange in the state of Israel for women who so choose to get the certificate, which is basically the equivalent of smicha, of ordination for women, administered by the state rabbinical society.
Wow. I heard a Syrian Orthodox rabbi said, see the women at the temple, the women dancing, reading the Torah, it's all very beautiful and captivating, but it wasn't originally how it was meant to be.
That's what the rabbi said.
That's exactly what the rabbi said.
I'm not shocked by any of this. First of all, if the thing was strictly a woman's minyan, my understanding is the women do take out the Torah, they do read the Torah. The men sit on the other side of the mechitza.
I wasn't there to visit.
Wait a minute. This is one halachic way in which the women can run everything they want to run.
But now, that's according to your opinion. Because even if
no, I'm not.
I seriously doubt that they would be able to.
I want you to ask your rabbi. This is now a Sephardic rabbi. Ask them, is there anything to his knowledge in halacha where a women's group, only a women's group, can read the Torah, etc.
Yeah, but that's not only a women's group. That's right there.
I'm talking about a strictly women's group.
Oh, yeah, then of course.
Wait a minute. That's all I said. Yeah. But you see, you went ahead with my words. All right. Just 1 minute. That's number one. Number two, the question now is, there is an Orthodox yeshiva who was organized by Avi Wise. I'm almost sure that's his first name. He's now, it was for many years in Riverdale, New York, as part of the Bronx, New York, where I come from. He's now settled in Israel. He's a very much activist in many ways, right wing, whatever. And he had a yeshiva that was established by him and others called Hovevei Torah. I'm not sure on the title, Lovers of the Torah, of which they did have women ordination. That was seen as something strange, exclusive of a type of left-wing opinion of others, orthodoxy. Now you have in Israel different types of kollel where women sit and study.
But they have seminaries. The Orthodox got seminary for women. That's 18, 19, the women go for
but the seminary eventually is going to lead to some kind of documentation, and that's where the rabbis of Israel, the rabbinical council, has now started a program where they do give ordination. That's all I can tell you. A smicha of sorts to women. They take the exam, those who are qualified, once a year. This year it had to be put off because of the situation with Iran, I guess, whatever. Look into it. I don't think it's just strictly an Ashkenazi thing. It could well be Ashkenazi and Sephardi. All I know is it is the Rabbanut of Israel. This isn't any reform or conservative or independent Orthodox group. This is the Rabbanut.
The Rabbanut, the Rebbitzin, or what?
This is the Rabbanut. The Rabbanut means the rabbinical council, the chief rabbis of their council.
Well, okay, so does that include conservative?
They're basically supervising the ordination of women. What the title of the woman would be, it would not be the word Rav. It would probably be something like Rabbanit. But the very fact that they'll have a certain title by their name would imply that they'll be able to supervise certain types, in my understanding, of Jewish law, which until now they have not been able to. The only thing that women were able to be advisable by other women was on marriage law, purity, the nidah, this type of thing, which has always been a tradition in Israel. When a young woman gets married by the Rabbanut, which was all marriages practically, the woman involved who's going to be a bride has special counseling sessions with a female person. Normally,
culture and relations on life and that sort of things.
basically Nida and stuff like that.
Yeah. Just a quick 101 on
Well,
relations.
of course, a woman can relate to a woman on this. A male will have a difficult time explaining certain things. Not that we're not able to. It's just
It's more comfortable with it,
exactly.
and it could blend that role.
Exactly. But now this offering of ordination for women, there's a group that I get mailing from called the Union for Traditional Judaism, which you ought to do, Baruch, for your own knowledge. UTJ. I get mailings every day from them. Sure, I'm about. Wait a minute. Let me go into it. The Union for Traditional Judaism is orthodoxy, but an orthodoxy that will be left of center rather than center or right of center. The man around whom this union has established itself was one of the great rabbis who survived the Shoah. His name, David Halivni Wise. David Halivni Wise wrote a book about his experience during the Shoah years. He also was one of the main professors at the Jewish Theological Seminary. And the minute you say JTS, already the word conservative comes to mind. I'm not denying that word conservative. But back in the years when I was a kid, JTS conservative is not the same as conservative today. The man who directed the JTS at that time, his name was Jacob Finkelstein. During the weekdays and on Shabbat, he was a rabbi of an Orthodox shul. Wait a minute, he was a rabbi of an Orthodox shul. The shul was where we met for Bnei Akiva activities. This is Rabbi Finkelstein, who was the head of JTS. Among the rabbis I had there was probably the greatest Talmud Chacham when it comes to the studying of the Palestinian Talmud. His name was Saul Leibovitz. Saul Leibovitz spent his last years as a professor at Bar-Ilan University.
Who's that one guy, Rabbi? He's real famous, Ashkenazi guy. He was like the leader of the Rabbi Savalkowski, something like that. Had like a Polish Jewish last name in New York.
I'll tell them, I don't know. Let me just finish this thing. My point is, by mentioning the names of Rabbi Finkelstein and Rabbi Lieberman, and Rabbi Lieberman had a young associate by the name of David Halivni Wise. David Halivni Wise was seen to be a Chacham that stood out. Everybody recognized that. He died in his early 90s. A York site for him was celebrated just in the last couple of days. Now, the question is, in that particular group of the Union of Traditional Judaism, they do administer, to my knowledge, women ordination. If you see one of their women rabbis, you would not be able to distinguish them from a Haredi woman. They wear dresses, their hairs are covered, they're extremely observant, but they're part of this progressive called traditional Judaism. David Halivni Wise was recognized by almost everybody. So it's not orthodox. It's basically orthodoxy updated, if you want to call it that. It's not for me to make these judgments.
And everything is not always what you see in the name. The name could be a misnomer.
That's true too. They don't call themselves Orthodox. They use unions or traditional Judaism. I have one or two friends who are who are members, active members of that group. I get mailings from them, and I enjoy reading their Devar Torah. Every week they come out with something on the parsha. All with the inspiration of what they would call their rabbi, David Halivni Wise. Anyway, let's get back to our Hebrew right now. And my point is that the Rabbinate in Israel offering a certain type of degree, recognition for women.
It's time for a break anyway.